Okay, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a fun review for you from the brand Undone. Of course, a little bit about the brand. They were established back in 2014. They are a micro brand with a real in-house approach to their production while really focusing on offering customizable takes on very classic designs. So pretty much they find a nice aesthetic that they use as a baseline, and then they let you guys be the designer. And all this customization is available on their website. You kind of choose. I'm sure you guys have seen tons of reviews. This is definitely a very popular brand as far as YouTube goes. It's definitely very reviewed because they do offer quite a lot, and they do stay on trend, whether it's from their customizable diver line or their tons of different variants on the Seiko Meca-Quartz craze right now that's kind of going on. So I'm really excited to bring to you a little custom number that they did for me that I'd like to dub the Bromaster in honor of the Average Bros Online Magazine channel name. So a little bit about this type of watch. Of course, it is definitely going for that vintage automotive theme, specifically, in a chronograph. And normally what you're going to look for as far as those key common characteristics and design language, you're gonna normally either it's gonna be something with very vibrant color palettes in the vintage aesthetic, or it's gonna be very muted, more on kind of the Speedmaster style. And then as far as the cases go, there's so many different variations, whether it could be like a chunky barrel shaped case or something more like this, where it's gonna be a little bit more sleek and rounded off. So there's just a lot of different options for this type of look of case and this type of chronograph. And this particular one definitely has a very, I'd say, readable aesthetic to it, that it is in kind of the honor and the tradition of the very famous Omega Speedmaster, hence the Bromaster name. So of course it is powered by, the venerable Seiko Instruments VK Meca-Quartz movement. Now this is a huge boom as far as micro brands. They're really there's just so many options that are out there. It's a very popular choice, and rightfully so. It's a really cool piece, and I think there's a lot technically about those movements to really enjoy. So notably, brands like Autodromo, Belmodo, and Stratton are powering watches that are charging somewhere in between the $500 to $700 plus range. So, I mean, by no means is this considered a really super cheap movement. Of course, in my review I did of an awesome Seiko watch that actually was powered by that movement. I think it was titled $99 Watch Nirvana. Yes, it's in a Seiko watch, of course, that they're doing huge batches and the natures that Seiko do. They can actually sell much cheaper. And then, of course, there's different markets for Seiko. There's direct, and then there's also the gray market. Micro brands don't necessarily have that luxury. They're doing much smaller batches, smaller runs, and paying a lot more per movement and paying a lot more per watch as far as from a production standpoint goes. So, I think sometimes people get a little carried away saying that it's just a Seiko movement, as far as that goes. But you know what? Let's go ahead and get this piece in hand. All right. So as you can see, really quite a timeless piece, really nicely done. And you can see is also branded on the back there, which is a really nice touch. Now, this is the Tropical Amazon dial. It's from the Urban collection. And, of course, it is branded there as the Bromaster. So, with that said, the retail price on these is actually $345, USD, and that's direct from Undone, and they do offer free worldwide shipping, which is definitely a very nice touch. As far as the dimensions go, this is going to be 41.8 millimeters in diameter, and it's going to be 47.5 lug to lug with a 13.5 millimeter height, and that's including the crystal there. The crystal is actually a hardened K1 mineral, and it's domed, as you can see. So that's definitely where a little bit of the cost savings comes from. But the nice thing about mineral crystals is they're actually super clear. As you can see, there's not going to be any milkiness or anything like that. They're definitely, as far as legibility goes, very nice. And then they're going to be a little bit more impact resistant, but of course going to be a little bit more scratch prone when compared to a sapphire. Now the bezel is really nice and it's fixed. It's actually has this really great tachymeter scale on there. The crown is not a screw down crown, but it is signed really nicely. And one of the nice things that you kind of notice when the bezel is colored here in this option, that it's actually a pretty nice separate piece there off of the case. And the case is actually really quite thin, especially when you consider that's really just the case back there. So it's a super thin mid case and really great, I'd say, just lines aesthetically. You know, it definitely has a lot going for it. Visual interest wise, I think that might not get picked up depending on what type of color scheme you go with when you are executing the particular model that you want to have built. Now the movement, as you can see, there's that nice sweeping tachymeter hand there. Sorry, bleh. Oh man, sorry, long day. So this is a nice sweeping chronograph hand there, as you can see, and it's really nice. It has a great sweep to it. It's really 5 ticks a second, which isn't too shabby, you know, compared to the normal 8 ticks a second, or maybe if you have some really high beat movement, you can get 10 ticks. But I think it's nice, especially considering that it is a quartz powered watch. The nice thing about the actual such a satisfying feeling there. The really nice thing about this particular chronograph is that it is powered by Seiko's Meca-Quartz movement. Now, the really nice thing that comes with that Meca-Quartz movement is you're going to get the quartz timing, but you're actually going to have mechanical chrono action. So basically, the chronograph, these aren't just buttons that are sending an electronic signal telling the hands what to do. These are actually mechanically backed, and you know, it really consists of a ton of parts basically, and you're getting that 1/5 second interval and the time sweep. You know, essentially there's really a multi-headed lever that's in there that disengages and really helps with that snap back or instant zero feel versus it sweeping back to zero. It actually consists of over 20 individual parts, and that's just the chronograph mechanisms there. So it's very similar to a mechanical chronograph gear train from that respects. And then, of course, we all know Seiko has a huge, you know, history in really the development of automatic chronographs. So really cool and very nicely done there. And it's something that I enjoy. You know, I don't really wear quartz watches too much, but you know, something with a little bit of personality, a little bit of story, definitely kind of helps find a wrist time in my book. So it's just a really cool movement that I'm a fan of, and I can see why they're so popular today. Now, as far as the you know, the dial hands and loom, you have, of course, that beautiful matte black dial. This is going to be the least patinaed of the variants for this particular style. It has printed indices, and then it has painted hands, which are white. The loom glows green pretty nicely, which we'll see here in the low light transition shots. It's water resistant up to about 3 meters. 3 atmospheres, which is 30 meters. And then it does have a really nice 20 millimeter lug width. And then the strap itself starts at 20 and tapers down to 18, which I think is really nice. Sometimes you'll find these tapering down to 16. I think on leather, it's nice to have it, you know, down to the 18 versus the 16, just because I kind of prefer to have a little bit more of a little bit more buckle on that end. And the buckle here, as you can see, is nicely signed with the Undone logo. So with that said, let's go ahead and get that on wrist. Okay, as you can see, it wears really nicely on my 7¼ inch wrist. So, you know, let me get a little bit more arm in there even. I think it wears really beautifully, especially since there is quite a bit going on the dial, although it is quite clean and I think, well laid out and everything like that. Of course, a chronograph by nature is going to have more information there on the dial. So I think it fills the dial really well. And let's say if this watch was just a basic three-hander in this scale, it might not wear so well. I think visually it might appear a lot larger and more expansive if the dial was a little bit roomier. So I think the fact that they do have the sub-registers on there and then of course the scale on the bezel, it just adds to really filling the space nicely. And then as you can see, really wraps around the wrist very well and just sits on there quite nicely. It's something that I think is quite comfortable, and I can't really complain. I think this leather strap is really nice, especially considering that it comes with the watch. Now, although this is a Seiko powered movement, we all know that an actual Seiko watch is going to come with a strap that's pretty much going to be a throwaway in most cases. So that's another perk of purchasing a micro brand watch powered by the same movement, is you're going to get, of course, just a couple of nicer details and things that they're going to really pay attention a bit more to make sure that they're gaining your business and your attention by adding in those types of benefits. And then of course this gorgeous crystal here really has a great dimension, and I think the mixture of finishes there are all very nice as far as on top of the lugs go. And there's a cool little kind of shape, reminds me of the number 1 there, how it has that little hash that comes back down. So really cool piece. I gotta say, very impressed. It's very simple, very clean, and I like it a lot. So let's go ahead and get some light transition. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights. So as you can see, the Lume is actually surprisingly good. Now, normally when you're going to be dealing with a watch with that kind of more vintage aesthetic, it's normally going to be trying to go for a little bit of a patina, which normally will actually reduce a lot of that Lume output. So really nice to see this watch here that doesn't really need to have super strong Lume by any means, showing that it is actually performing and kind of exceeding expectations there. Now, my studio lights do a great job of kind of, simulating direct sunlight, but the nice thing is to actually get an idea of how this is going to look in lower light transition, because in actuality, you're pretty much not always going to be looking at your watch out on a bright sunny day in a blue sky. Sometimes you're going to be, I should say most of the time, you're going to be walking indoors from outdoors. You're going to be getting in and out of your vehicle and whatnot. So really nice to kind of get an idea of that low light transition there. As you can see, you can get a better idea of how that Lume is going to hit you there. And then the nice thing is you actually do get a nice idea of the finish there. You can really see that fine brushing on the tachymeter bezel, even though it does have that coating on it. You can really read the nice finishing through the actual coating, which is really a testament to the quality there. And this is not a super expensive watch by any means. I wouldn't call it super cheap, but in the spectrum of watches that I review on this channel, this is definitely on the more affordable end, and I think it's definitely one of those ones that I would consider kind of worth the risk, if you will, if you were interested in this type of watch. And I think it's a great aesthetic. It's super kind of on trend right now. So what can I say? I'd say for closing thoughts, this thing has great proportions for pretty much most wrists that are out there. It also wears very comfortably. And then, it's really a great kind of vintage remix. And then it's also a value at, it's pricing under $350. right now these movements and this type of build and this type of look are on much more expensive watches, and that's not just watches with a bunch of heritage. This is, you know, your basic micro brands are definitely charging a lot for this particular movement and this kind of aesthetic and look. So it's really nice that you can actually personalize something to, you know, a very good extent, I would consider, and really have something and add value just with your own personal style, right, and what you're into and what you like. So as far as model variants go, there's of course the vintage line, the Regatta line, which was just recently released. There's the Mystique line, and then there's the modern dials as well, and those are basically kind of a base for any type of modifications or choices that you're gonna make in the bezel or the finish or, you know, the handset and all that. Really endless customization optimizations there. And then as far as comparable models, there are definitely a lot of other vintage inspired VK powered chronos out there, but most of them do cost a lot more. So I think that's something to definitely take consideration if you want something that's really, you're really tight on value proposition. I think this definitely does offer a really great value for what you're getting, especially considering that you can kind of make it your own. You can throw your initials on there, you can throw a little message, or you know, you can even put a logo on there. So I think it's pretty cool. I'd say the bottom line, it really just pulls that vintage vibe off just perfectly. I mean, of course, I highly doubt there are any watches that were called the Bromaster back in the day. But I think if you were looking at this at a glance, you know, it wouldn't be hard to mistake it for something that was pre-existing and you know, a little bit older. I think, of course, I did go with a little bit more of a modern style by not choosing the stainless steel bezel with kind of the black indexes there. Instead, I did, you know, with the black coating. But I think for me, I kind of like the play of the two-tone, and it to me, it's also a bit more legible, and I actually like the kind of modern touch that it adds. And then, of course, I really do like that they did a great job matching the Lume with that actual paint and the filling there, and then even with that kind of ivory stitch accent on the vintage rally style strap. So with that said, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked the video, please do hit like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.